So we are finally through the labeling of the parts of the reproductive system, which means that hopefully I'll stop getting strikes against my YouTube channel for posting biologically accurate pictures for a biology class. Anyway, now we're moving into the development side of things. We're moving into how does a baby happen? I mean, that's what we're going to start with anyway. So hopefully everybody has an answer. But if you don't, maybe this will help. Also, if you don't, talk to your family a little bit. I believe they can probably help you out with that mystery in explaining it. All right. So here we are. And when we're looking at this, we take the female reproductive system, we take the male reproductive system. Those two things come together, and we end up having the sperm, the male gamete, introduced to the egg, the female gamete. And those two need to come together. That is the process of fertilization. Fertilization is the term scientifically for when the sperm and the egg combine. Now, what's interesting is that, remember, from genetics, if we get too much DNA, that is a major life-threatening problem. We don't want too much DNA. We want just the right amount, just a little bit from each side. So it's important that the egg has some sort of protective measure. The egg only wants to allow one sperm in. Otherwise, you're going to get 50% of your DNA from the egg. You're going to get 50% of your DNA from the sperm, 100% when they come together. But then there's another sperm. Bring in another 50%. Now you're at 150%. Imagine trying to follow an instruction booklet for building something like a car if you doubled half of the pages and just shoved them into the book wherever. It would make no sense. It would be worse than IKEA. So the egg has this protective layer, and the moment that one sperm penetrates through that, it immediately freezes effectively. Like the membrane freezes in terms of letting anything in and out. It just seals up. It goes into lockdown, and that's it. So all the other sperm, whatever other sperm may have reached the egg, it's not going to end well for them. They're not going to succeed at their life goal. Here go the lights again. Now, once that egg cell is fertilized, wow. You can only see the reflection in my glasses. Once that egg cell is fertilized, then we're talking about a zygote. Now, these individual terms are not super important, but what is important is understanding what's being talked about at what point, especially right now, political climates, a lot of different people taking action over their beliefs on things. It's important to understand what a level of development for human beings are, what it entails, and what it does not. A zygote is a cell or a cluster of cells. There is no nervous system. There is no respiratory system. There is no circulatory system. It is literally a bunch of cells that in general are smaller than the point on this mechanical pencil. Now, a zygote is only going to last for the first few days. Now, after that point, it will now have developed, starting to grow those specialized organ systems like the circulatory and the nervous and stuff like that. Now, it will be what we call an embryo after the first few days, all the way up until the end of the second month, week 8. During that time, we've seen embryos before. It's still not recognizably human. It has some basic structural organs that have started to come online, depending on where it is in those 8 weeks. But it is still very much not really a person, certainly not aware. Now, where we get most of the conflicts between people with their varying beliefs is once it's a fetus. Now, when something becomes a fetus, that starts after week 8 generally, and it's that way all the way up until birth. At this point, it is generally recognizable as a human being. Within the first few weeks of being a fetus, most of its internal organ systems are now online and functional. I'm meaning they could function, not necessarily that they're going to. But that is when we're looking at a fetus. And 12 weeks is where they say here, because it's really kind of unclear. Generally, we go with the embryo up until about 8 weeks, and then it's a fetus after that. So keep that in mind. There is some wiggle room depending on individual development and things like that. But yeah, so once something becomes a fetus, then we're talking about a recognizable, functioning human being, at least at some level. Prior to that, not so much. Now, this is what the zygote looks like, those first few days. And what we have is here are the 2 nuclei, one from the sperm, one from the egg. They're going to fuse, fertilization, and then it's going to start to multiply. It's going to start to make more and more cells. It's going to form kind of this hollow area. This red level is the uterine lining. And so now it's going to burrow into the uterine lining to hide from the mother's immune system in this in the spongy layer. Once it's in there, then it's going to start to develop 2 different internal cavities. One will become things like the digestive system, the circulatory system, and things like that. The other one is going to become the nervous system. Those will then start to further specialize. The placenta will start to grow towards the end as the developing child now needs materials from mom. It can no longer function just by the materials that the host cell had. And it starts to get more complex. Now, by the 1 month mark, we are now out of the embryo, but out of the zygote, but into the embryo phase. By the end of that 2nd month, 8 weeks, now we're leaving the embryo and we're going into the fetal. And then it's just development as we're familiar with and as we recognize. Remember, when we take a look at different organisms evolutionarily, we see that same first step for virtually all of them. And then for the next group, those that are the least related to us are the most different, but just about all of the other like land animals, even things like birds, turtles, we still look real similar to for quite a bit as we are then into our embryo. Once we get to fetal levels of development, well, then we can tell the difference between things like reptiles and birds. But the other mammals and us still look real similar. Now, that will continue, assuming that everything works right, that there are no unforeseen complications. The baby will continue to develop like this for about 9 weeks, 9 months. And then finally, it is birth time. So when it is birth time, a lot of different things have to happen. First of all, the baby needs to be reoriented head down. This is important because if a baby tries to come out of mom leg first, there's this problem where like one leg may go straight, like down through the cervix and the vagina for birth. Like let's say that this is the opening, but then the other one gets stuck to a side. Well, now the muscles are going to be pushing that baby out, but one leg is off to the side. That leg's going to end up getting folded and cracked and broken if the baby's going to be pushed out that way. Real rough, real dangerous for mom and the baby. If the baby goes sideways, like here first, that's going to fold. No, bad. So it is head first. Now, thankfully, we kind of naturally have some ways that the body handles this and gets things oriented. Once the baby is oriented, the cervix, the protective cap of the uterus, will start to dilate and open up to a distance of 10 centimeters. Now, interesting. I went through the lab earlier where I showed everybody the ability to have a ruler on your phone that is accurate. That's 10 centimeters. That distance in a circle. So a baby has to fit through an opening this big. Sorry, ladies. This generally means the head is going to get squashed a little bit. That's all right. The baby is designed for this. It is flexible. Its skull is not bone yet. Its skull is mostly cartilage, so that gives it some flexibility, and the brain is kind of a jello. So, like, it can be pushed. It can be squeezed. But the baby starts coming out head first, usually then twists in the process. Once the shoulders are out, everything's easy. Now, it is important to note, though, we are then going to get what we call the afterbirth, the placenta. The placenta then follows the baby out because it's no longer needed. So what is that? Well, the uterus was the most important part of the female's reproductive system because this is that protection, the development, and the muscles to get the baby out. 3 very important functions. The placenta, you'll see in bright red there. Super important. All right, so this is an organ that grows once a pregnancy occurs. It does not exist otherwise. And what it does is it takes mom's blood and it takes the baby's blood supply and it brings them real close to each other, but it doesn't let them mix. So now the materials that are in mom's blood supply can diffuse from high concentration to low concentration. So if mom just ate a big meal and she's got all the sugars in her blood and the proteins in her blood and the salts in her blood and all those necessary materials, and the baby doesn't because it's been using them for development and growth, and those blood supplies are so close to each other, the high concentration in moms will diffuse into the low concentration in the babies. And at the same point, the baby will have more waste buildup. Baby can't pee, so all the urea is just sitting in its blood. CO2 from its life process, cellular respiration, is built up in its blood. So the food and the necessary materials are in high concentration in moms. The waste materials are in high concentration in the baby. So the good stuff diffuses into the baby. The bad stuff diffuses out into mom's blood. Mom can then breathe out the CO2. She can pee out the urea and get rid of the waste, and the baby gets its food. So this is the key towards fetal development in any form of placental mammal, is the fact that the placenta lets the 2 sides exchange. We need to exchange materials, but we can't let the blood mix. If the blood mixes, that's really bad because mom has a full active immune system. She has a standing military that is ready to fight and defend. And all that military will recognize is that this thing is not us. There go the lights again. Let me get them. And so if you have a scenario where mom's immune system can ever detect the baby, mom's immune system will attempt to kill it. Because all it recognizes is that this shouldn't be here. So these things are key ideas. You have to understand the placenta if you want to pass the human reproduction part of the Regents exam. You have to understand why it's important, because we need materials to exchange. We need the baby to get the food. We need mom to get the waste so that they can take care of the things that they need to take care of. Now, this is what it kind of looks like. So the baby would be up top, mom would be down bottom. You have the maternal or mom's blood vessels coming in, and it creates this little like lake, this little ocean of mom's blood. The baby then has its blood in these little trees of arteries and veins. High surface area, lots of space for diffusion to happen. And so the waste diffuses out, the good stuff diffuses in. This is what it would look like with the actual baby. Now, this would be a very, very young fetus, probably around 12 to 16 weeks in order for it to be this small. But once again, you can see the placenta is that uterine lining. The uterine lining that was built up in preparation for the baby has become the placenta. We see mom's blood vessels back here. And once again, all that space for diffusion to happen to make sure that the baby gets all the things that the baby needs. If you've ever heard about pregnant women having bizarre food cravings, a lot of that comes down to what the baby is signaling to mom. The baby releases hormones that communicate to the mother needs, what materials. The brain recognizes those signals, and then it tries to link up, all right, what foods do we find that in? We need salt. We need salt. Where do we get salt from? Pickles. Pickles have a lot of salt. We crave pickles now. We need fats. We need fats and oils. Where do fats and oils come from? Ice cream. Ice cream is nothing but fats, oils, and some sugar. Great. Now we crave pickles and ice cream, because those are the foods associated with what the baby is signaling it needs. Now, of course, once the process is over, the placenta must come out. So I'm going to warn you, this one gets a little bit graphic, but there's nothing wrong or bad about this. This is how life works. And this is what the placenta looks like. Here's the umbilical cord that would be connecting back to mom. You can see all of those blood vessels growing through it, kind of like roots of a tree, in order to supply that back and forth material exchange. The membrane around here to make sure that mom's blood never mixes in with the baby's and vice versa. This is the key organ for human and placental mammal dominance, is our ability to make that. So from this today, we're going to be moving then on. That was slideshow, our development right there. We're going to be moving on to number 37, our fetal changes lab. Video is posted. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that helps. And maybe it clarified something that you didn't understand. Over the next few days, we're going to be going into this in a little bit, not much greater detail, but we're going to be reiterating and practicing this idea of what the placenta does. Does the blood ever mix? How does the baby get the materials that it needs? So, ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. Take care, and I'll see you in class.